of my life. I love my wife and kids, I would die for them. I would even, I want to live just like the other fellow on the other side. He loves the air he breathes. The other side, he loves the life he leads. I needed work. I was just a poor boy in the ghetto. I saw no other way out. God save my soul. I was put in harm's way, now I must speak out. Get out of this bad dream. I'm gonna speak out about their crazy schemes. Every night when I go to sleep, I can't close my eyes because of what I've seen, what I've seen. I pray to God, won't you let me have some peace? Peace, I thought that I was fighting for. Well, it escapes me. The truth about depleted uranium. What if I want a child? Will she be whole, or will she struggle with this dirty war? It blocks out all of the sun, this dirty war. Poisons everyone. Don't you see what they have done? They're exploiting every mother's son, every mother's son. Now they send our daughters to their dirty war. We're not their whores. We are the children of America. We are the mothers of America. We are the fathers of America. We are the brothers of America. We are the sisters of America. Soldiers, speak out. We can tell the truth of what we've seen. We are not liars. Children and to their futures. Soldiers, speak out. 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 Soldiers, speak out.
Watada's court-martial?
It is with heavy heart that I'm here. Heavy heart that the U.S. military may be taking action against a noble and principled officer of the U.S. military who is saying to the U.S. military and the United States government that the war in Iraq is an illegal war, and he refuses to take orders to go to an illegal war. This is a right that a military officer has, to disobey illegal orders. And to be ordered to an illegal war is something that people can stand up against. And as you can see, not many people do. We have one officer that's done it. We have 24 men that are in Canada who have done it. We have 10 people who have gone to jail, been imprisoned, who have said no to these illegal orders. Aaron will be the first officer that will say no. By the Nuremberg Principle, codified after World War II, when the United States of America executed Japanese and German military officers and civilians for going along with what the international community termed illegal wars. That's when it came to the front, that we as civilians and military have the obligation and responsibility to say no to a government that takes us into an illegal war, a war of aggression. And by the Nuremberg Principles, a war of aggression is called a war crime. So our country the Bush administration is committing war crimes. The country of Iraq did nothing to the United States of America. The Bush administration invaded and occupied a country that did nothing to the United States. And by the three principles of legal wars, one of which is if the United Nations Security Council will vote that the international community has to take military action against a threat to the international community, the Bush administration was unable to get the UN Security Council to vote for military operations on Iraq. Another one of the principles is that if there's an immediate or imminent danger to your country, the weapons of mass destruction were not imminent danger. In fact, there was an ongoing UN inspection to determine if there were weapons of mass destruction. But the Bush administration threw away that and said, we're going in anyway. And the third is to prevent a humanitarian disaster, such as a genocide taking place. And while there were the Saddam Hussein regime 10 years before had committed atrocities on its own people, it was not doing so at the time. In fact, the atrocities that were being committed on the people of Iraq were being committed by the international community, by the international sanctions that had been placed on the country. So in my opinion, and in fact I resigned my career as a diplomat because I firmly believe the United States, the Bush administration, has taken the country into a war crime, into an illegal war of aggression. I firmly support Lieutenant Watada's decision to refuse orders to deploy to Iraq. I think he is on firm, solid legal ground that he is disobeying an illegal order. We support him. Others support him too, not just myself. A colleague in the diplomatic corps of the United Kingdom back in March of 2003, the same month that I resigned, she also resigned. She was the deputy legal counsel of the equivalent of the British State Department or the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. Her name is Elizabeth Willemshurst. And in her letter of resignation, she specifically states that the invasion and occupation of Iraq by the United States and the United Kingdom would be a war crime, as a war of aggression. And that was her legal opinion to the British government. The British government also threw away the legal opinions of its lawyers and went ahead, just as the Bush administration went ahead, to this illegal war. I think we all have a responsibility as citizens to support those in our government, particularly our military, who stand up. It's not easy to stand up. Having been in the military 29 years, I know the pressures that Lieutenant Watada is under. It is a very difficult thing to go against the organization. When I resigned from the State Department, that was very difficult. I had spent 16 years there. And it's hard to leave your colleagues. And I know Lieutenant Watada is having a difficult time leaving his colleagues, the people that he's trained with. But there are higher principles at stake. There are principles that will save one's conscience. I mean, it is an act of conscience that he's doing, but it will save his soul. For going to war, to an illegal war, where you will be committing illegal acts, where you will be, in the name of the United States of America, be committing murder. These are things that people have to evaluate what they want to live with the rest of their lives. And Lieutenant Watada has said, I will not have on my conscience the murder of innocent men, women, and children. I will not participate in an illegal war of aggression, a war crime. I hope that all people of the United States will join us on June 27th when we do call for a national day of action to stand up for Lieutenant Watada. We have lots of organizations that have endorsed this. We have Global Exchange, Not in Our Name, the War Resisters League, Veterans for Peace, United for Peace and Justice, Code Pink, Women for Peace. Here in the Seattle area, we have the Seattle Draft and Military Counseling Center, Olympia Movement for Peace and Justice. We have the Central Committee for Conscientious Objectors. We have the Campus Anti-War Network. We have the Action Center for Justice. We have the Catalyst Project. We have cities that are participating: Seattle, Olympia, Tacoma, Charlotte, North Carolina, Cleveland, Ohio, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and San Francisco, California. And we hope that hundreds of cities all throughout America, cities and towns, will join with us in a day of protest against this illegal war and a day of conscience for people, citizens, and military to stand up to say no more to these wars. Thank you.
Back, so it's great to be back here, and certainly to stand in support of Coffee Strong, one of the 3 coffee houses, the GI meeting places that we have in the United States now. We've had another one, what was it, Fort Drum, a different drummer, but that's now closed. But so now we have Fort Lewis, Washington, Coffee Strong. We have Under the Hood at Fort Hood, Texas, and we have Tom Palumbo and I can't remember the name. Off base in Norfolk, Virginia. So we have 3 tremendous groups, and because it is a group, it's all of you all that help support something that cannot support itself. It takes the members of the community to recognize that we do have an opportunity to talk with our servicemen and women, to talk with them and to be there for them as they have challenges within the military. I myself was in the military for 29 years. I was a diplomat for 16 years. I resigned in opposition to the war in Iraq. And since then I've been speaking out on my concerns of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and wars in the Middle East and Lebanon and Gaza, wars in the Horn of Africa, of Somalia, of Djibouti, and meeting great people like you all as I speak out on these things, coming to wonderful communities like this and being hosted by wonderful groups like AFSC, where we have the American Friends Service Committee that's always available to offer their facilities to people who dissent, to people who say that we don't really go along with everything that our government always does. And at wonderful places like this, invariably there are wonderful meals. And I'd like to say to Susan and Heather and Karen, and there she is, there's all of you all who have helped prepare this wonderful, delicious dinner. Thank you so much for that. It is a time for us to get together.
Above average.
And they're always above average. Whenever our groups get together, they're the best cooks in the whole world. And we're the best eaters in the whole world. But as we gather again, and I know there are a lot of things that are going on here in your own community, that University of Washington, there is a conference going on right now on the costs of war, of the effects of war on public health, a major conference. We have Veterans for Peace that are having a presentation tonight on homeless people in our community, many of whom are vets. The veteran community is the largest growing population of homeless people now. And women veterans are a part of that too. Tampa, Florida, I was there about a year ago, and one of the members of the VA was saying that they have a tremendously large women's veteran population that live in cars. And they found out about it because they had a Christmas party. And all of a sudden, and they put it out to the community, the veterans community, you know, please come, and if you have kids, bring the kids. And all of a sudden, here are all these women and all these little kids. And they started asking, where'd you come from? Where do you live? This is kind of like the first time we've seen your little family. And they were saying, well, we came here because it's warmer down here than it was anyplace else, and we had just enough money to drive the car to here, and now it's parked, and we live in the car. And so many of our vets that are facing homeless situations, that are facing the tremendous problems of post-traumatic stress, of combat for women, many of them, and for men. Many of them having not only the combat stresses that they're dealing with, but also sexual assault and rape in the military. That's one of the things that I do a lot of speaking about now. This last year, there were 3,200 rapes that were reported in our military. And as in civilian life, it's the most underreported crime that there is. Of that 3,200, 11% were reported by men. So we're now starting to get men who are coming forward to say that in this environment, this military environment, a violent environment, supposedly trained to be violent, but only on order, and then you turn it off, but we know that doesn't happen. And the violence that is being wreaked upon our own members of our military itself, and then you look at the rates of domestic violence within the military community too. So all of these tremendous challenges that we have as a community, whether it's Seattle, whether it's Fort Bragg, whether it's Fort Hood, Killeen, Texas, all of these communities where there are large military populations, we are the ones that have to help. It's not going to be the government that does it. The government starts the wars. They get the military involved in these things, and then who picks up the pieces? Well, it's the community. And for us, and I would say probably everybody at these tables were in those marches before the war in Iraq started. You know, you knew what was going to happen, and you were trying so hard to prevent another war. We were already in Afghanistan. I went to Afghanistan in December of 2001. I helped reopen the U.S. Embassy in 2001. It became clearer and clearer that the military options are not the way to go about some of these things. And if you look at really what has happened now with Al-Qaeda, there have been more Al-Qaeda operatives that have been rolled up through international law enforcement techniques than there have been by military operations. Even this last guy that they say they caught a month ago, it's in the paper today that they caught somebody about a month ago, and then he spilled the beans on somebody else. It's interesting, in the paper it didn't say how they caught him. It certainly didn't say that the U.S. military went right in and they figured it out. I'll bet you $50 that when it all comes out, it was through law enforcement techniques that they tracked, they started listening, they started tracking. And it wasn't that they needed to send a drone missile in to kill him, that they could find someone, they could get him through law enforcement techniques. And that's where I think as we talk about the wars and their effects of wars, that Afghanistan war that now is in its 9th year, 9 years we've been in Afghanistan. And as this new president ramps up the U.S. involvement in that war, where Barack Obama has said we will have 30,000 more troops, which will bring the number of U.S. troops to about 100,000. And we already have 70,000 U.S. contractors in Afghanistan. We already have them. And they are moving more and more of those contractors out of Iraq and sending them on into Afghanistan. This war of Afghanistan, or Barack Obama's good war, the just war, his Nobel Peace Prize speech talking about just wars and how, it was not a speech that I appreciated coming from somebody that was receiving a Nobel Peace Prize, but considering how he got it, I guess one would not expect anything different from him. Barack Obama, who has the largest defense budget in the history of the world, not under George Bush, but under Barack Obama, we have the largest defense budget in the history of the world. The increase of drones being used in Afghanistan and Pakistan, in Yemen, in Somalia, and God knows where. I understand there's a new drone manufacturing place that's going in near Portland. Something that will keep us busy. One thing about these governments, they always give us plenty to work on. And the issue of the drones, of going after the defense military-industrial complex, the big defense contractors that are making a killing off the killing, that are creating all of these new weapons so that it protects our soldiers. We don't have to put our soldiers on the ground. And you should appreciate that, the American public, because it's fewer of our casualties, and we don't really care. Do we care about all those innocent civilians that are killed? All of those hundreds of civilians that are killed each month as an American drone is sent into Pakistan, is in Afghanistan. And Stanley McChrystal says, his policy is we're reducing the number of civilian casualties in Afghanistan. And yet, every time one of those drone missile strikes, we find out, that intelligence wasn't quite as good as they thought it was. That every now and then they may get someone they say is a leader of the Taliban or an Al-Qaeda. But when they also say, and oh yes, we did kill 10 others, women and children, or those 8 children that were found bound, and women found bound and gagged, 15 people murdered in their own home by our soldiers, murdered, purposefully bound and gagged and killed. We look to Iraq. We've been there 7 years now. I resigned 7 years ago, and that was right as the war was starting. 7 years, we still have over, I think it's 150,000 U.S. military troops there, and we have 180,000 U.S. contractors. We have more U.S. contractors than we have military in Iraq. And the Obama administration says that they are just continuing the Bush timeline on withdrawal of troops. Well, if you thought the timeline was way too long under Bush, I would submit it's way too long under Obama. It's way too long. 50,000 troops to be left there. They say they're not combat troops, or they won't have a combat role. They'll stay inside the American towns that we have built there, those big mega bases that we have. The mega bases that have McDonald's and Burger King and Taco Bell and whatever you want, it's there. These bases that will not close down in the foreseeable decade, in my opinion. Even the Obama administration guys and gals are now saying that we will be in Afghanistan for decades. And the Bush administration was saying essentially the same thing about Iraq. They have their little timetable, but I think we all can figure out what our government's up to there. That indeed we will have a lot of U.S. military and contractors in there for a long period of time. And the contractors many of them are private security firms, paramilitary groups like Blackwater, now called Z, Triple Canopy, DynCorp. Blackwater gets thrown out of Iraq because of all of the horrible abuses that they've done there. And then Well, guess who's now the guards, the protection group for the U.S. ambassador in Afghanistan? Z, Blackwater. I was in Afghanistan in September. I was there for 10 days. We only stayed in Kabul, the capital city, because it was too dangerous to go anyplace else. It was dangerous in Kabul too. The week after we left, there were 3 guest houses within a 2-block area of where we were that were overrun by the Taliban, set on fire, and the UN workers that were living in 2 of those 3 complexes were burned to death. You probably remember that in October of 2009. Well, just 1 month ago, the guest house where we were staying, which was occupied by a lot of citizens of the country of India who were in Afghanistan doing developmental work. That place where we were, the Park Hotel, was overrun by the Taliban and burned. Kabul is not a place that's held by the 20,000 international military forces that are in the city of Kabul, and the training site for tens of thousands of Afghan police and military. You have all this military presence there, but they don't control the city. The Taliban can be anywhere it wants to be. It can burn whatever it wants. It can fire rockets into the luxury hotels that have been built there. And there are some luxury hotels. There are some that have walls even higher than the U.S. Embassy. And that's pretty high because the U.S. Embassy is nothing but a mega fortress. But these new hotels have their walls around them, but the Taliban know exactly what hills they have to stand on in order to fire missiles down into those hotels, which they do with great frequency. There's money. There's a lot of money now in Kabul. When I was there 9 years ago, there were no lights at night. Everything was, well, it was, the Taliban had been pushed out of Kabul. There weren't any Al-Qaeda in Kabul anyway at the very beginning. But it was, it'd been years since there'd been really any money that had come into Kabul. It was a pitiful little city. Well, here it is 9 years later, and how many billions of dollars has the international community given to, well, the government of Afghanistan, or have run their own governmental programs, developmental programs? How many billions of dollars would you say? I mean, hundreds of billions of dollars have gone into that country. And now, you see in Kabul, Afghanistan, you see there are lights on at night. You see that there are neon signs that are glowing at the wedding palaces. The multi-story, big new buildings, they call them the wedding palaces. That's where people go in to get married. That's the one time, it's kind of, it's a little party time. And guess who controls those wedding palaces? Whose money was it that has now built those? The warlords that the United States hired back in 2001 and 2002 and 2003 and 2004 and 2005 and 2006 and 2007, 2008, 2009, and 2010. We pay individuals, called warlords, millions of dollars every year. In the beginning, it was to go fight the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. Now it's to pay them off for not attacking our convoys, bringing in all of our logistics. We pay off the son of the Minister of Defense. The son of the Minister of Defense now has the largest transportation contract for moving U.S. military goods out of Pakistan into Afghanistan. He says that he has to charge us a lot because there's a security component of transporting those funds or transporting that equipment, those materials, because people are going to be shooting at his convoy and he has to pay them off. So he is paying off Taliban, Al-Qaeda. I mean, we are paying through the nose for all of these things that are going on there. And what is the whole purpose of this? Do we know yet what the real purpose was for the United States to be in Afghanistan?
Oil.
Oil? Other resources, national natural pipe gas lines. That's one of the theories of it. Afghanistan is a country very wealthy in mineral resources that have never been tapped because it's such a mountainous place. It's hard to get in there. And there's been 32 years of war now. But the first major contract that's been let internationally by the Karzai government on resources, it was not given to the United States, it was to China, where they will be spending $3 billion to extract and make the largest copper mine in the world in a copper deposit. It's a very rich country with resources. So here we are, 9 years in Afghanistan, 7 years in Iraq, and yet we still keep pushing. We keep pushing to say these wars need to end, and yet these wars aren't ending. There's too much money in it, too much money to be made. When it doesn't matter which administration it is, they're just going to keep pumping money into the Department of Defense, which now has, when you count in the veterans benefits, the veterans program, which is military related. When you take out the security, national security component of the State Department, which is the arms sales to other countries, the defense budget is about 55% of our total budget. And yet in the newspaper today they were saying that, oh, we're going to have to cut back. We really do have to start cutting back on things. And the one place that I saw in the paper they specifically said they were going to cut back on is in the State Department, my old place as a diplomat. That place that, we have, what do we have, 1.5 million military, and we've got about 4,000 diplomats. And the budget for the military is, I don't even know how big it is. I mean, it's just enormous. And yet this is where we're going to save money. We're going to cut back on diplomacy. So I think we've got our balances off here a lot. Other places that we're concerned about. I spent most of last year of 2009 in the Middle East, in Gaza. Gaza, the little tiny strip of land, 25 miles long, 5 miles wide, attacked by the Israeli military on December 27th of 2008, a 22-day attack that killed 1,400 Palestinians, wounded 5,000, left 50,000 homeless, destroyed virtually every government building. A place that is one of the most densely populated in the whole world. 1.5 million people live in that little strip of land. They are supported primarily through tunnels. Up to 500 tunnels at any one time are going from Gaza under the Egyptian border, where food, materials, supplies, and the Israeli government says, and weapons are coming through there, weapons that are used to shoot at Israelis. And not that I condone at all the missiles that Hamas and other groups from Gaza have sent into Israel. That's not right. But the disproportionate use of force by the Israeli military on Gaza was not right. And the international blockade, siege, quarantine that's on Gaza that's been going on now strongly for over 3 years, and when you count all the other things, it's been going on for about 5 years. That is really just having such a negative effect on the health and education and the daily life of the people of Gaza, where the Israelis will not let school books come in. They won't let playground equipment come in. They are not letting cement, building supplies in, so that those buildings that were destroyed a year and 4 months ago, so they could be rebuilt. We took 7 groups into Gaza last year. We were very fortunate to be able to get groups in. About 300 people that we, Code Pink Women for Peace primarily as the organizer for that. And then at the end of the year we thought, well, we're going to have a march. We're going to march in solidarity with the people of Gaza. So we started organizing in August, and by November we had over 1,340 people that had signed up from 44 countries to go to Gaza. And most of them arrived in Cairo, Egypt, which is the jumping off point, 6 hours then across the northern Sinai to the border with Gaza. But the Egyptian government, after most everyone was already in the air flying to Gaza, they said, you're not going into Gaza, you can't go. It's too insecure for you to go. I was the liaison with the foreign ministry, and the Egyptian foreign ministry. I went in there every single day to let them know how many people were coming. Here are the names, here's the passports, all these things that they require for you to submit to them before they will make a decision on whether you can go. And we were begging them, if you're not going to let us go, let us know ahead of time so that we can tell all these people not to spend $1,000, $1,500 to fly all the way to Egypt. But they didn't. They waited until everybody was in the air, and then they said, well, that's too bad, your group will just have to be tourists because we're taking all your permits for your buildings, for your buses, for, in Egypt, they reminded us you can't have more than 6 people meeting in one place at one time because it's against the law. It's a dictatorship. They don't put up with protests, with vigils, with demonstrations, which started the moment our activist crew from these 44 nations arrived. Madder than could be. What do you mean they're not going to let us go? Of course we'll go. We can pressure governments. We do it to our own governments all the time. We put pressure on them and we get them to change their minds. So for the next 10 days, there were unprecedented vigils, demonstrations, protests all over Cairo. They'd never seen the likes of them. We had 300 French that were camped out in front of their embassy. We had roads that were blocked. We had banners up in trees. I mean, these things Egyptians go to jail for. The international community, we felt we'd give it a try. We'll see if we can get away with it. And we did. Eventually, 100 of our group were allowed to go into Gaza, just 100, through a special appeal to President Mubarak's wife. She runs her own International Peace Foundation. We thought, okay, Suzanne Mubarak, let's see what you really stand for. You stand for peace, or you're willing to put a little pressure on your husband and his government? So we sent a delegation to ask just that, and lo and behold, 4 hours later, we got a phone call saying, tomorrow morning at 7, you can send 100 people. And we did. Gaza, a place that will continue to be a flashpoint, as well as the illegal settlements that are going on in the West Bank. So the U.S. complicity in all of this, of us selling F-16s to the Israeli government that were used to attack Gaza, the Apache helicopters, the white phosphorus, the dime bombs, the dense inert metal explosive bombs that are made out of atomized tungstens that when these bombs explode, these atoms just come cutting people's arms off, legs off, necks off, cutting them in half. An American bomb used to kill everyone in this room, right here, but the room across the way would not be injured. No one in that room would be. A targeted assassination vehicle that was used for the first time in Gaza. That's our testing ground. The United States military equipment testing ground is in Gaza. And the Israeli military are our primary testers for a lot of these things. So there's a reason that we're in this room. It's that there are so many challenges, so many things that we are concerned about, of wars, of illegal wars, wars that must end, of U.S. complicity in other areas of the world besides Iraq, Afghanistan. The United States that has over 900 military bases throughout the world. Places that we've had them for 100 years. If you look at Guantanamo, 60 years since the end of World War II for the ones in Germany and Italy and Japan. And this, just this coming Sunday, we're going to have a lot of we have a lot of people that are going downstairs. I don't know if you...
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
That's our, we have a homeless
Oh, wonderful.
shelter for
Yes.
shared group here.
They're here.
Going to get their
Thank you.
mattresses.
Great, good, okay. Well, right here, I mean, we have the United States that has so many bases that are all over the world. Here it is, 60 years after World War II. This coming Sunday, on the 25th of April, there's going to be demonstrations all over the world against military bases, particularly on Okinawa, the southern island of Japan. And in fact, the Stars and Stripes, the U.S. military newspaper for Japan, has already put out an article to the U.S. military population in Okinawa saying, you need, and this is at the behest of the commanders there, to tell the military community you need to stay on your bases because there will be probably over 100,000 people on Okinawa that are going to be in the street saying no more bases in Okinawa, take the Marine helicopter base out of one of the big populated areas, and don't build a new runway out in the middle of the South China Sea in a pristine area. So there's a lot of things that we will continue to work on, that we will keep pressuring people. And I know it's tough right now because so many people have been worn out by these wars. They're just worn out by it. And the folks that were out on the streets with us for the last 5 or 6 years, they're not coming out in the same numbers. It's people like you all that are the committed, the ones that are there during the leanest of times, who still have some bit of strength left. And you're the ones that will get us through this low point, and as tragically things will happen, and people will become more outraged. They will come back to put more pressure on the government. So that's where we have to be there. We have to keep this base going, that we have to keep encouraging each other, that we have to know that what the path that we're on is the right one. Because war is not the answer, as the old slogan goes. No, war is not the answer. And yet we have a new administration that still thinks it is. So it's up to us to keep committed, to keep going, to support great groups like Coffee Strong as they work within the military community to let those men and women know that we are thinking about them in the best of ways, that we know that what they're going through is very, very horrible, and that we will be there to stand by them. Working with groups like Veterans for Peace, Code Pink Women for Peace, the American Friends Service Committee, the groups like AFSC that has decades of experience working against empire, against horrible treatment of other people, illegal treatment of people. So it is with great pleasure I am here, because I know Seattle is in good hands, that you all are here, that you're going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing to stop these wars, to close Guantanamo, to right the wrongs that our legal system now has in place. That we were just talking a little earlier, Arizona, where now they've passed this law that the police can ask anyone with no reasonable cause, are you illegal? So I think we all need to have our t-shirts that says we all are illegal, Let's not pick on just one person, we all. If one is, we all are.
We can devote it to. But obviously the special relationship between the U.S. and Israel, what would that mean? A U.S. citizen in Israeli custody?
Well, yes, we've had that before. Last year, in fact, there were American citizens that were detained in prison for 10 days by the Israeli government and then deported, including a U.S. presidential candidate and former U.S. Congresswoman, Cynthia McKinney. So there's a history of the Israelis arresting and deporting American citizens. There's also an American citizen on this flotilla that he is a survivor of the 1967 Israeli attack on the USS Liberty, a U.S. naval ship. So that is a real interesting one. If he gets arrested after he barely survived his ship being blown up by the Israelis 40 years ago. Even in my letter of resignation from the State Department in March of 2003, I resigned
specifically over the Iraq War, but I also put in that letter of resignation that the unbalanced policies of the Bush administration and other administrations on the Israeli-Palestinian issue was a danger to the United States. And I felt that the Bush policies of not engaging at all, this was back in 2003, were dangerous for America and for the world. America for 60 years has had totally pro-Israeli policies. And it's been a disaster for the United States and the perceptions of the rest of the world toward the United States. It's jeopardized U.S. national security, and it's actually jeopardized Israeli security too, because they've been able to get away with anything they want to. Any criminal act they want to do, any violation of international law, America protects them. And I, as a U.S. diplomat, as a retired Army colonel, think that is a great danger to America, to Israel, and to the world.
How does the tail wag the dog?
Well, the tail wags the dog because there are powerful influences in the United States, key Jewish persons with lots of money who use that money and influence to influence our U.S. Congress and to influence every U.S. president.
Let's discuss this further in terms of your experience of dealing with Israel. What can they do to this ship?
Well, certainly they have a very powerful military. The United States gives Israel $3 billion a year for military purchases. It is the strongest, most well-equipped with U.S. military F-16s, Apache helicopters. It has naval vessels that are the most powerful in the region. It can do a lot. It can fire, of course, weapons at us, so they can fire over the bow. They can ram the ships, as they have done some of the free Gaza ships before. They can board the ships. They can take over command of the ship. However, that's one thing when you've got one ship out there, or two, essentially a pleasure vessel. When you've got these big ships, big cargo ships that can withstand a military attack for a certain period of time, when you've got this passenger vessel with 600 people that say, we want to go to Gaza, it's a whole different level and scale. I would certainly hope that the Israelis recognize this for what it is, a peaceful, nonviolent mechanism for forcing governments to do what governments don't want to. It's where the citizens of the world tell governments, you have to listen to the citizens.
Can Israel be that reasonable and logical? That's a very reasonable thing to think.
Well, if it wants to start in a different path, which it really needs to, because it's in the doghouse of the world. It is in the bottom of every hole by its horrible policies that are getting worse by the day. If it wants to turn over a new leaf, this would be an excellent time to do it. To save face, to say, well, I mean, there are a million ways that they could turn this to try to get it more in their favor. And I would certainly hope that they use that tactic, because the people of Gaza need this humanitarian relief. They need the construction materials to go in. The siege of Gaza must be broken. And this is just the first of, I can foresee many, many flotillas that will be going. In the last year, we've just seen an ever-increasing number of things. Viva Palestina has brought 3 huge convoys by land in through the Egyptian border. We brought 1,300 people from 44 countries into Egypt during December to go into Gaza, but the Egyptians said no. But instead, these activists from all over the world activated in Cairo, much to the displeasure of the Egyptians. Now we have 8 ships that are on the high seas ready to go in. I mean, 6 months from now, there's going to be something else. 6 months. This is the beginning of the end of the siege of Gaza. There's no doubt about it.
How would Barack Obama respond to something as big as this? Obviously, they cannot not take notice of it. What would they do?
Yes. Well, we've informed them that there are U.S. citizens that are on board these boats, and that we fully expect that our government will be coming to our aid if there is an illegal seizure of boats we are on in international waters.
You're smirking as you say this.
Yeah. Well,
because you have your tongue in cheek on this one.
Well, no, but I know where the Consular Affairs office is in the State Department. I used to work in it. I'm going to go knocking at their door. Where are you? You know, if you're not coming to my aid, What good are you for? I protest at the State Department frequently, and this will be a good one. I'll be out there. This is Ann Wright, former diplomat. You didn't protect me at all. You didn't protect any of us. What good are you? So we'll hold him accountable.
Having worked there, give me a response from the State Department. Now, what would they say out of the window then?
Well, officially there will be silence. Unofficially, there will be people at the windows going, "You're right. You're right."
So it's a big challenge for Barack Obama, isn't it?
It is. It really is. And if he really means that he wants to change U.S. policies in the Middle East, this is a very, very good time to put pressure on the Israelis to say to them, you can't continue this forever.
And Obama will apply enough pressure, hopefully.
Well, that's what we're telling Obama he must do. It is very hard, though. I mean, we have never had one American president of courage and bravery. Not one. So far, he's not brave. He's not courageous. He speaks a good thing, but that Nobel Peace Prize, why? If he really wants to be a recipient of the Peace Prize, he needs to force Israel to act in a civil manner toward the Palestinians.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
नाज़रीन, आपने मिस एन राइट की बातचीत सुनी, उसी फ्लोटिला के ऊपर है और अमेरिकन सिटीजन्स भी हैं. देखते हैं कि वाशिंगटन में से अब क्या जवाब आता है.
I want to live just like the other fellow on the other side. He loves the air he breathes. The other side, he loves the life he leads. I was just a poor boy in the ghetto. I saw no other way out. God saved my soul. I was put in harm's way. Now I must speak out. Get out of this bad dream. I'm gonna speak out about their crazy schemes. Every night when I go to sleep, I can't close my eyes because of what I've seen, what I've seen. I pray to God, won't you let me have some peace? Peace, I thought that I was fighting for. Well, it escapes me. Tell us the truth about depleted uranium. What if I want a child? Will she be whole? Or will she struggle with this out all of the sun. This dirty war, it poisons everyone. Don't you see what they have done? They're exploiting every mother's son, every mother's son. Now they send our daughters to their dirty war. We are not their pawns, we are not their whores. We are the children of America. We are the mothers of America. We are the fathers of America. We are the brothers of America. We are the sisters of America. Soldiers, speak out. We can tell the truth of what we've seen. We are not liars. Soldiers, speak out. We have a duty to all children and to their